to this episode of Hear It From a Huskie. I'm Dr. Laurie Fiorenza, and today I'm joined by our Trauma Informed School Interventionist, Curtis Diggs. Welcome, Curtis.
Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everybody.
So good to have you here. Would you be able to provide a little overview of what the Trauma Informed School Interventionist does?
Sure. In my role, I do a number of things. So I support staff mostly in a number of different ways. So I provide training workshops during like professional development days or staff development days. But I also am able to go into classrooms if staff members need me to observe students and kind of help with those students who may present some adverse behaviors, but trying to get to the underlying bottom of that and then giving them pointers. Another part of the job, which people may not be familiar with, is that if staff themselves have experienced some trauma due to the school or some personal things that maybe affect their work, then I have spoken to some staff members about that as well. And then on the student side, students themselves can seek me out if they are having issues personally, academically, social, emotionally, and I work with them on that as well.
Wow, thank you. So this is the almost end of your second year, right?
Yes.
So tell me about your vision for supporting the well-being of our students at OPRF.
Oh, man. I would love to be able full scale to like have some groups, whether it's SEL or different things where we like focus on the needs and the wants of the students by like talking to them and making sure they have the agency in that, definitely, but in a sense of noticing where they are and doing something proactive to help them versus being reactive, like when it's already too late. I want to say too late, but like something has already happened. And then we then have to go back and like help them figure that out. We see it in the beginning, like I see something happening here, so let me get you the support you need now so that we can prevent something happening in the future, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. You did mention, helping the students to be proactive. Are there particular strategies that you employ or that you feel like work best for younger people who are dealing with maybe some trauma or challenging situations?
Number one strategy I always use is really to give students a space to just have voice. So I always give students a chance to like talk and tell me their story. And one of the things that happened was that like very early on in my career, a student told me like, no one has ever asked me like, what's your story? And he's like, you're the first one that did that. And that really drew me in. And so I'm very intentional about letting students be able to share their story, not just taking the adult side or what I think they need or what they want or what they did, but like what actually happened here. And that's one of the things about being trauma informed. Instead of saying, what did you do? It's what happened to you.
Yeah, that's really important, especially at a young age, to be seen and heard. So that sounds like what you're referring to is just really making sure students feel seen and heard and their stories are known. What are some common signs or indicators that a student might be experiencing some trauma?
I look at differences in behavior. So like if I'm used to seeing you one way, like this is your baseline, you're normally happy, upbeat, and then you're coming in consistently sad or down or not talking to people, you have withdrawn. Or if it's the opposite, like you're normally a quiet person, but now you're being like very hyper or hyper vigilant, those type of deals. I'm like, okay, maybe something might be going on. So let me pull you to the side and figure out like what's happening here, right? But I also start with the basics, like have you eaten today? Okay. Like let's meet those basic needs. Have you eaten? Do you need something clothing wise or whatever? Like what's the concern? Like what is it that you need? One of the things I believe is that all behavior is telling us something, a need or a want or something. And so I'm trying to get to the bottom of what that something is. Of course, you have the obvious things, right? If someone is crying, right? Like those things, then you know, okay, maybe there's something going on here. And I'm always like, hey, what's going on? Like case in point today, and again, it doesn't always indicate trauma, but just to know, like somebody sees me and somebody cares and pays attention. So I saw a young lady sitting on the floor. Hey, everything good? Everything's all right? Oh yeah, I'm just waiting on such. Okay, cool. But like when I see that, I'm like, hey, something could be happening here. So instead of walking past, I'm always engaging to be like, what's going on? What's the concern? What's the need here?
Yeah, and that sounds like something any of us can do, right? As we're walking past students, we can absolutely check in. I don't have to provide any counseling or therapy. I can just check in with you. and if necessary, redirect you, send you to someone.
Absolutely.
So as a teacher, an educator, what are some things that I could do to respond? If I see a student crying and I walk up and say, how are you doing? And they start sharing their story. Kind of what are some suggestions you have for faculty and staff when they run into those occasions?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think staff should know their limits and like check in with themselves. Like, do I have the capacity in this moment to even have this conversation? Just be honest with yourself where you're at, but then find a good stopping point. Because we're not asking people to necessarily be therapists or social workers unless they are the therapist or social worker. Right. But to find that good, healthy stopping point and say, hey, let me get you to someone who could further assist you. Like, thank you for sharing, right? So not negating their story. Thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for trusting me with that information. I would like to get you to XYZ, whoever that person is.
Yeah. How does your role intersect with or support the work of our student services personnel?
I think that we work in tandem together. The way that I like to look at it is think about urgent care or an emergency room versus like your primary care physician. Like urgent care, they figure out what's happening in the immediate. And then when you're leaving their care, they always say, follow up with your primary care. So like if I am involved, I'm acting in that urgent care space, right? But then once I'm like, okay, we know what's happening here, let me get you to your social worker. Let me get you to like the person that you really need to be. Now that we know you're okay in this moment, let me get you to the person who can provide you ongoing care.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for what you do to support our students and the impact you're having. It is really impressive. And I know that in our world today, there are a lot of people that need someone who just cares and is walking by and wants to know how they're doing. So
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Hear It from a Huskie. Stay tuned for more from our Huskie faculty making an impact.